Jordan Peterson revealed in an interview what he believes the problem for conservatives is, as well as what he really thought of ex-PM Scott Morrison, who he recently met and talked to during his tour of Australia. But what really did Jordan say? Let's dive in. Let's talk about Peterson's interview with Sky News. In a recent interview with Sky News, the clinical psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson was incredibly blunt about what he felt the problem for conservatives was, and how groups like climate activists exploit people with their guilt campaigns. In his own words, the central issue for conservatives is to stop allowing the radicals to exploit you from the guilt front. Continuing on, he slammed climate activists and said, "You really think all our problems can be reduced to excess carbon dioxide production?" He said that we have other problems, and that conservatives need to stop allowing groups like climate activists to use guilt as a weapon against them. This is not the first controversial interview that Jordan Peterson has taken during his tour recently, as he also appeared on the Piers Morgan Show, where he discussed a wide range of topics such as political correctness, safe spaces, and cancel culture. What did Jordan Peterson have to say in this interview? During his interview with Piers Morgan, Jordan Peterson responded to Meghan Markle after the Duchess of Sussex criticized the psychologist in a recent podcast. Meghan Markle took a swipe at Dr. Jordan Peterson during her recent Archetypes podcast, where she featured an audio clip of the author saying, "I don't think that men can control crazy women." In a response to this, Dr. Peterson said that her voice drips with the same falsehood that the voice of Kamala Harris drips with. Continuing on, he said that it's the sanctimonious Fox Compassionate talking down to her audience. That's not all though, as he continued and even made fun of Meghan Markle by attempting to impersonate her. He said that trying to be sure that we're all really on the same compassionate page here, and we're all being victimized by terrible forces that are arrayed against us, and none of that's really fair. It just grates on me. He continued, "And I do believe that it is the case that's very difficult to control female antisocial behavior, often the type that's been pilloried as hysterical, and I think there is no shortage of clinical evidence to support precisely that claim. It's very difficult for women to control female antisocial behavior, and females who are antisocial, that feminine pattern is reputation salvaging under the guise of compassionate care, and it's extraordinarily destructive. So I stand by my words." It seems as if Jordan Peterson believes that Meghan Markle's comments were unnecessary, and she just doesn't hold any intellectual standing for her beliefs. Comparing her to Kamala Harris did spark some criticism, but it seems as if Peterson believes this was a fair criticism of the royal. Considering that Meghan was the first to call out Peterson, it'll be interesting to see if she has any clapback towards Jordan in another one of her podcasts in the future, or if she'll stay quiet on this matter. Whether or not she replies to Peterson could easily spark even more controversy, so many are hoping that this matter does continue to escalate to bring attention to the situation as a whole. What did Ronaldo have to say about Peterson? That's not all the crazy news we've heard revolving around Peterson as of late. However, as recently, the famous footballer Cristiano Ronaldo was asked whether he has ever heard of Jordan Peterson. On a recent episode of the Piers Morgan Show, Ronaldo gushed over his friendship with Jordan Peterson and what he thought about the philosopher and public intellectual. With Ronaldo recently revealing that he had been reading Jordan Peterson's book, Morgan was quick to ask Ronaldo what his thoughts were. The famous footballer said, "I'm a huge fan of his," and that he had learned a lot from the book. Continuing on, Ronaldo reflected on his relationship with Peterson. "We had a nice strategic conversation, not only for the moment of my life, not only for football, because my life is not all football. I'm a businessman. I have many important things in my life, and when you are surrounded with these people with you, people that make your life more interesting, they reach something in your daily life," explained the famous footballer. Elsewhere in the interview, Ronaldo told Morgan about writing his own book in the future, calling it Cristiano Ronaldo's 12 Rules to Life. The footballer remarked, "I want to educate not only my family, but my fans." What about Jordan Peterson's thoughts on Scott Morrison? Jordan Peterson was also asked about his thoughts on Scott Morrison. Peterson revealed the details of his conversation with the former Australian Prime Minister in an interview where he talked about what had been said and what was discussed. "We mostly talked about Australian energy policy and the relationship to net zero in 2050, Peterson commented, and we talked about the fact that he believed that part of what was necessary to solve the energy transition problem was to ensure that energy was provided. Let's say, if it was provided in an alternative way, renewable way, that it would also be equally inexpensive." He said that he spent a lot of time trying to convince other leaders of when they were orchestrating their environmental policy, but not with much success. Ultimately, it seems as if Scott Morrison is quite the unlikely fan of Jordan Peterson. It's not every day that you hear a politician politician being supportive of a philosopher, but it seems as if Scott Morrison and Jordan Peterson have quite a bit in common. This is especially true after Peterson's recent talk in front of Parliament House and his tour of Australia. Who knows, maybe in the future we will see more politicians openly admitting their admiration for Jordan Peterson. Will this controversy over Peterson spark more interest in his work? It's impossible to say, but it's definitely possible. One thing is for sure though, there are a lot of people talking about Jordan Peterson right now. Whether they love him or hate him, he's definitely one of the most talked about figures in the world right now. Whether you agree with everything he says or not, there's no denying that he's an incredibly outspoken man who has a lot to say. It will be interesting to see what the future holds for Peterson, and whether or not this recent controversy will help or hinder his career. Although there was undoubtedly some hindrance after his controversial comments on Twitter, which led to him being banned, and we're sure he'll do so again. Has Peterson been unbanned? Yes, shortly after the billionaire CEO Elon Musk bought Twitter, he unbanned Jordan Peterson from the site. In a series of tweets, Musk announced that he had purchased Twitter and began to unban controversial figures such as Peterson, Andrew Tate, and even former President Donald Trump. Amid all of these controversies, however, Peterson has attracted the attention of many conservative Australian politicians, and even former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. We'll have to see if this controversy helps or hurts Peterson's career in the long run, but he definitely seems to be making a stir in Australia at the moment, and his tour is definitely gaining a lot of attention. After recently denouncing Kanye West for his comments as well, Peterson seems to be at the corner of some controversy. This is only accentuated by the calls by many left-wing Australian politicians for him to be deplatformed and banned from the country. Okay, let's sum it up. In summary, it seems as if Jordan Peterson is in the news a lot lately. After sparking controversy with his comments on Twitter and being unbanned by Elon Musk, he's been on a tour of Australia where he's met with many conservative politicians. During this tour, he has made some controversial comments about climate activists and Meghan Markle. He's also been praised by Cristiano Ronaldo and Scott Morrison. It will be interesting to see what the future holds for Peterson and whether or not this recent controversy will help or hinder his career. Still, all of the famous figures who have been recently talking about Peterson and his work will definitely help to increase interest in him, and we're sure that more people than ever are going to be reading his work in the future. Whether or not this is a good thing, however, is up for debate. So what do you think? Although Peterson has been in the news a lot lately, what do you make of all this? Do you love him or hate him? The view of Peterson could go either way, but it's definitely a controversial topic, with Jordan Peterson being platformed by some of the most famous conservatives in Australia and also being denounced by many left-wing politicians. It's hard to know what to make of him. In any case, we're sure that there will be more news about Peterson in the future, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on all the latest developments. Peterson could very well become an even more famous figure in the future, and only time will tell. So, what are your thoughts? Go ahead and let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.